The 80s saw the reimagining of a lot of genres and tropes that had come a few decades before. The writers and showrunners of the day had grown up on the classics. When it came to their own creations, they went with what inspired them. So, when they got the opportunity to create a new detective series for CBS, there were a few classic nods to the noirs that came before, even if the bright Hawaii sunlit beaches and brightly colored shirts weren't in black and white. But boy, was the car red. When you think about 80s detectives, there's one standout that everyone remembers, and on this episode of Gone But Not Forgotten, we're heading to Hawaii and looking back on the man with the stash with Magnum P.I. The 70s and early 80s were a time of classic PIs on television. Banachek, Jim Rockford, and even the return of Perry Mason would be gracing TV screens alongside the likes of Columbo. There was one more colorful detective that would make a name for himself in the small screen landscape, and it was a name shared with one hell of a gun. Magnum P.I. would start out far different of an idea than the mustached ladies' man we'd all know and love in the short shorts and Hawaiian shirts. The creators of the series were TV royalty, Glenn A. Larson and Donald P. Bellisario, names you've heard a few times on during Gone But Not Forgotten. Larson at the time had 2 hits at ABC with Battlestar Galactica and The Hardy Boys. While neither would make it past 1 or 2 seasons, they'd be massive pop culture touchstones for years to come. When ABC canceled both shows in 1979, they stopped developing Magnum P.I. for the network. Larson and Bellisario would take the show to CBS, and it was there it would find a happy home. At the time, Hawaii Five-0 was getting ready to go off the air. That meant CBS's investment in a production house for the series was going to be sitting there unused. Rather than let that happen, CBS moved the show's setting to Hawaii. There's even a nod to Hawaii Five-0 where Magnum mentions a character from the show during the series, meaning shared universe. Originally, Thomas Magnum was conceived to be a sort of American James Bond, but Tom Selleck, who was already set to star in the show, didn't want to play that sort of role. He felt it would constrain him to basically a one-trick pony. He pushed back on having the character be more like a regular guy who enjoyed the laid-back Hawaii vibe. This made sense, as just a year prior in 1979, Selleck had a pilot for a never-made series where he played a private investigator working in Hawaii, with a partner played by James Whitmore Jr. The pilot was aired as a made-for-TV movie called The Chinese Typewriter. Also in 1979, the world very well could have been a different place for a lot of people. Notably Harrison Ford and fans of the Indiana Jones we all know and love. Tom Selleck read for the role of Indy, and he got the part. That's right, kids, if you didn't know this bit of trivia already, Indiana Jones was going to be played by that guy from 3 Men and a Baby.
Look, I did what I did. I don't expect you to be happy about it. But maybe it can do us both some good.
Why start
Just
now?
shut up. Shut up and listen to me.
Fate is a funny thing, and the pilot for Magnum P.I. was already filmed and it was picked up by the network.
Stephen and George, they said, well, thanks for telling us, but we got cards to play with CBS.
It just wasn't going to happen.
Turned out CBS wouldn't let me do it.
The series focuses on Thomas Magnum, a private investigator in Hawaii who lives on an estate known as the Robin's Nest. It isn't his, but he gets to live there and use the sexy as hell red Ferrari that is owned by Robin Masters. Masters is an author and apparently makes as much money as Stephen King. Magnum's arrangement with Robin is a bit of a mystery, but it's implied that Magnum most likely saved Masters' life, as well as inspired a number of his books. Magnum is an ex-naval officer who served in Vietnam and is highly decorated with a Purple Heart, Navy Cross, and a literal chest full of medals. Magnum was a POW in Vietnam and had a long, complex military history. Now working as a private investigator, Magnum has a few friends who routinely assisted him on cases. One of these is John Higgins, or just Higgins, the major domo of Robin Masters' estate and the epitome of British stuffiness. Higgins has 2 large Dobermans, Zeus and Apollo, who help guard Robin's nest. Magnum and Higgins butt heads quite a bit, but eventually become friends over the course of the series. TC is Magnum's friend and a helicopter pilot, while Rick is another pal, both of whom help Magnum during cases. Continuing the running theme of many TV action series, TC and Rick, and as stated Magnum, all served in Vietnam together. Speaking of Rick, Remember when I said that Magnum had a modern noir element to the show? The series is typically narrated by Magnum in voiceover. This is much like your classic PI type films and TV series did. Mike Hammer, for example. Both Darren McGavin and Stacy Keach versions would do this. Rick, at least in the first episode, had a bar called Rick's Cafe American, a total nod to Casablanca. Throughout the series, we get to piece together Magnum's history, and it's not a happy one. The series dealt with vets and the horrors that happened during Vietnam, where shows like the A-Team had characters that were, broad in characterization. Magnum P.I. was embraced by veteran viewers who appreciated this approach. This was more realistic when it came to PTSD and living after the war. We never see Robin Masters' face during the entire run of the series, but we hear his voice. There was some debate that Higgins and Masters were the same person. That was quashed though, with Masters actually being shown walking, back only, and Higgins talking to him on the phone. I guess you could say this makes Robin Masters the Charlie to Magnum, TC, and Rick's Angels. John Hillerman played Higgins in the series, and I can't tell you how many people were shocked to discover he wasn't actually British. Hillerman was from Texas and was in the Air Force before deciding to pursue acting. This would lead to him having a long career in both TV and film. One notable turn would be as Dr. Watson to Edward Woodward's Sherlock Holmes in the CBS TV movie Hands of a Murderer. He'd win an Emmy and a Golden Globe for his work on Magnum P.I., and it's this role he is most known for. Hillerman would pass away in 2017 at the age of 84. Roger Mosley would play TC, the put-upon friend and chopper pilot for Magnum. Mosley was another actor with a lengthy TV and film history, working with legends like John Wayne, Chris Christopherson, and even working with Selleck on his TV series Las Vegas in 2007. Mosley's last appearance on screen would be in the Magnum P.I. remake series. Sadly, he died of injuries sustained from a car crash in August of 2022. Larry Manetti, who played Rick, was more like the character than you might think. He owned a restaurant in Las Vegas and wrote a book filled with stories about his time on Magnum called Aloha! Magnum Larry Manetti's Magnum P.I. Memories. Manetti also came from a background with a lot of film and TV work. He'd also show up in Selleck's series Las Vegas, as well as other Belisario series like Quantum Leap. Plus, he appeared as a character named Nicky the Kid DeMarco in the new Hawaii Five-0. This is the same character who would show up in the new Magnum P.I. series. Continuing the Magnum family reunions, Manetti would also appear in an episode of Selleck's Blue Bloods in 2023. It should also be noted that Magnum had extra star power in the voice of Robin Masters. Orson Welles voiced Masters a few times in the series. This would be one of the last roles for Welles, who would pass away in 1985. Thanks to Magnum P.I.'s massive hit status, the show was able to get some impressive guest stars. Over the show's 8-season run, actors like Scatman Crothers, Annie Potts, John Saxon, and Judge Reinhold would appear, just to name a few. Lance Legault, who would play a major role in the A-Team, would also appear as another military man in the form of Colonel Buck Green in a number of episodes of the series. Various Hawaiian celebrities would also appear. Many were local actors who were part of the Hawaii Five-0 crew. Remember when I said that Magnum P.I. was sort of new wave noir for the 80s? Frank Sinatra would co-star in what would be his last film TV appearance as a New York cop named Michael Doheny in the episode Laura. Laura is Doheny's 7-year-old granddaughter who, on the night of his retirement, was assaulted and murdered. Doheny goes to Hawaii to take revenge on the men responsible for this horrific act. Sinatra was old-school Hollywood music royalty, and he was known for playing tough characters. Funny enough, he starred in many noir films, including The Detective and Tony Rome. Laura is a rough episode, and here's no happy ending in this sort of story. Sinatra is truly great in this. These sorts of episodes are what made Magnum P.I. stand out when it came to network television. But perhaps the moment that will forever be burned in the minds and hearts of Magnum P.I. fans was the 2-part episode, Did You See the Sunrise? Guest star Bill Svensson would play Ivan, a KGB officer who tortured and held Magnum, TC, with his friend Nuzo hostage during Vietnam. The episode is probably one of the darkest and most grim of the series, and sees Magnum almost be killed by a bomb in his Ferrari. This winds up killing his friend Mac, and TC is brainwashed into almost killing someone. Ivan is responsible for everything, but due to diplomatic immunity, he flaunts the fact that Magnum can't do anything about it. In one of the greatest and most unexpected moments in TV history, Magnum asks Ivan,
"Did you see the sunrise this morning?"
Yes. Why?
This moment was on the same level of some of the most legendary of 80s TV, and was something never seen before when it came to the lead character and hero of a series. TV Guide would include this in their 100 greatest episodes of all time. Decades later, the animated series Archer would reference this moment of the show. Magnum P.I. was a shared universe, and not just with Hawaii Five-0. Magnum P.I. crossed over with 2 other CBS shows during its run. This was a shared universe long before the MCU tried it. Magnum and the show Simon & Simon had a 2-parter in 1982 that started on Magnum P.I. and would end on Simon & Simon. In 1986, Jessica Fletcher, the star of Murder, She Wrote, would appear in Magnum P.I. when someone tries to kill Higgins. Magnum returned the favor by appearing on Murder, She Wrote that same week. Shared universe, baby. Speaking of Simon & Simon, Magnum P.I. also had a hit theme song. These were the heydays of TV series having hit music for their title sequences. Magnum's theme didn't have lyrics, just like the Simon's one, but that didn't matter. It cracked the Billboard Top 100 thanks to its writer, Mike Post, another name we have mentioned in Gone But Not Forgotten episodes. The funny thing is that the theme song wasn't used until episode 12 of the series. With the massive success of Magnum P.I., Tom Selleck was in high demand. Over the course of the series, Selleck would wind up doing a number of feature films. This would impact stories and the show's production, as the crew had to figure out ways to work with his schedule. During his time on the series, he had a number of films released. This included the sci-fi flick Runaway, where Selleck took on Gene Simmons and the massive hit 3 Men and a Baby. To this end, much like Moonlighting, there would be episodes that would focus on other characters like TC and Rick. Magnum P.I. would run for 8 seasons in total, and was going to end with the season 7 finale with Magnum actually dying from his wounds while in a coma. Tom Selleck co-wrote this episode which, much like the miscarriage sequence in Moonlighting, showed Magnum walking off into the clouds. This did not please fans. The demand for a send-off that was worthy in the eyes of Magnum P.I. fans was so great that Tom Selleck came back, and CBS gave the show an 8th and final season. The series would end being reunited with the daughter he thought was lost, and his return to the Navy. When the final episode aired, it was one of the biggest series finales of all time, with 50 million people tuning in. After the series was over, there was talk about having Magnum and his crew hit the big screen in a feature film. Military fiction maestro Tom Clancy actually wrote a script for it, but Universal Studios decided there wouldn't be enough interest, and so Magnum's Ferrari never roared into theaters. In another possible shared universe moment, Donald P. Bellisario was looking into having Dr. Sam Beckett leap into Thomas Magnum in an episode of Quantum Leap during the series' run. But alas, that didn't happen. I'd have loved that though. Magnum P.I. was an awesome series that went dark when it needed to and brought together some classic aspects from the detective genre while mixing in relevant issues at the time. Important issues, like veterans who were dealing with the fallout from Vietnam. It could go from charming and funny to layered and gritty. More impressive was that it did it seamlessly, with a cast of characters who made you care for them. Tom Selleck's charm and acting chops came across in every episode, and part of the reason it worked was that Selleck took the time to help make the character his own. He brought his own ideas, his own writing, and heck, even his own clothes to bring the character to life. That showed in the number of fans who loved it. I've already said there was a new series of Magnum P.I, so I guess our usual question of if it should come back is a moot one. CBS had brought Magnum P.I. back in 2018 as a Navy SEAL who returned from Afghanistan. Jay Hernandez stars as Magnum, with Perdita Weeks as a female Higgins who worked for MI6. Zachary Knighton is Rick, who owns a tiki bar, and Stephen Hill is TC. The series keeps the mysterious Robin Masters and has a stated explanation as to how Magnum is able to live at the Robin's Nest. In the new series, Masters gets to write novels based on the adventures Magnum shares from his time in the military. In yet another shared universe moment, characters from the new Hawaii Five-0 appeared on the series. Another example of Magnum fan love was when CBS decided to cancel the new show after 4 seasons. The fans were able to start yet another fan campaign, which convinced NBC to pick it up for a full 2-season run. As of this episode of Gone But Not Forgotten, the new Magnum P.I. is on season 5. So there you have it. Magnum P.I. is still driving the beautiful roads of paradise in Hawaii. Best of all, you can stream the original series on Amazon, iTunes, Vudu, and Google Play. And while the new show is doing just fine, there's something to be said for the classic and what it brought to television. Tom Selleck created an icon in Hawaiian shirts and movement for facial hair with a mustache as iconic as the car he drove. But he also gave viewers a hero who wasn't perfect and never claimed to be. Thomas Magnum was a fighter, helping those who needed it, and was an example of a real hero, with warts and all. A modern noir classic that took advantage of all the color it could, but kept that detective story heart.